and youth. It is still a problem, and as we all are aware, vaping or e-cigarettes is the new product. And we saw a few years ago that, lung injuries caused by vaping were an alarming new wrinkle to the problem. So what I do is I work on both statewide and local policy, and I support through my communications and advocacy. And that includes things like writing letters to the editor, op-eds, blog posts, helping with media relations. I'm probably one of the, I'm not going to say definitively, I don't know exactly everyone else's career, but I did not have a career in journalism before this role. But all of my work has a thread line of writing and communications and strategic communication. So I have a deep understanding around storytelling and framing stories for a particular target audience or audiences. So that's kind of what I do, and that's what interests me. And particularly these days, what interests me is the idea around changing narratives, changing dominant narratives or challenging dominant narratives. And that's what I do in my work. What often I find the strongest strategy around advocacy communications is challenging what people think and what they've known regarding certain ideas around health or systems. So that's what I've been doing for the last 4 or 5 years, but I have done it all except for actually being a journalist professionally. I did it in high school, but not professionally. So.
Well, I can piggyback off of that, kind of sticking to the healthcare team. So just as a reminder, when I was in my undergrad, I was fortunate to meet a lot of people in the industry, which gave me the opportunity to start my career at Weber Shandwick, which is a global PR communications agency. It just happened that at that time, I was part of the healthcare team and worked on a few pharmaceutical clients. I did everything from, I was an intern is when I started. So I did everything from media relations to copywriting, monitoring for coverage. So a broad spectrum of experience. But I also want to own the message or a channel instead of just being on the service side of the agency. That was a big miss for me when I was there, is I handed things off to a client, but never realized or understood if it ever came to fruition. So that was kind of my big push for moving in-house at Boston. But what happened with me was, as I was assessing my career, I realized that I loved healthcare and felt like it was a unique world, just like Jenny said, a lot of protocols and processes to follow. So I got invested in the industry and really do think having a deep knowledge in a vertical, if you will, has really set me up for success at my role at Boston. Started Boston 5 years ago. I was part of the cardiology business unit at that time, but last year moved internally to a different business unit. So similar role, but completely different audience, completely different products and teams. So as a channel owner for social media, I get to leverage social to talk with physicians who are 5,000 times more smarter than I am, but an interesting place to kind of help clinically minded people think from the communications perspective and how they can kind of engage their patient audiences. We do a lot of patient communications as well. And social is interesting because it's kind of a mix of marketing and digital capabilities, and there's a lot of room to grow. Med device, I would say, is probably behind the curve just with all the FDA protocols and guidance in place, I guess. My biggest advice is truly if there is a industry where you feel passionate about, building skills in that would be very beneficial. I'm hiring someone for my role, and having experience in healthcare is a big plus because there's a big learning curve if you come in-house from a different industry. And then hand in hand, I think communications is broad. And I remember when I was looking for jobs in the beginning, not knowing what to look for, what is a job title. I know a lot of us kind of worry about that stuff, but just being at Boston, you can have a communications role in digital, social, marketing communications, marketing, clinical writing, educational writing, R&D, trade show. So there's just so much out there for communication roles that we just don't know how to look for necessarily, but just keep an eye open and see what else is out there, even if it's like out of your comfort zone, I guess.
Okay, that just leaves me. So right now I guess if we're going to start and go backward, I've been with 3M leading global branding communications for about a year and a half. I started at the height of the pandemic. So right when everyone was told, go home, we're going to work from home. So I've never actually been to the corporate headquarters outside of just the interviews through the process, but it's been a wonderful experience. Definitely been interesting and challenging, and in a lot of different ways. I certainly knew that obviously with any role, you're going to be challenged, but this has definitely stretched me in ways that I haven't. And I think I've pretty much experienced it all in this business, that's for sure. So prior to 3M, I had the joy of working for the University of Minnesota. For 6 years. And I was at a tiny little institute called the Technological Leadership Institute, that did really large scale marketing communications, leading those initiatives. It's really focused on MBA type programs for like CTOs, CIOs, those who work in more of the med tech or securities technologies industry. Fantastic experience. And then from there, I went to the medical school. Have such an affinity for the university, not just personally because of it being my alma mater, but just a really positive experience. Right before I left and went to 3M, I launched the Health Fairview brand, which is the really known as like the academic health system in our state, via its partnership with between the University of Minnesota Physicians and Fairview Health Services. So I, like the last two panelists, have been in healthcare for quite some time. Prior to that, I was in proprietary higher education. Also a fantastic experience. I think for me, one of the biggest drivers is working for more of a mission-driven organizations that like support causes or people or the publics that are most near and dear to me. And so one of the things I really appreciated about proprietary higher ed is the population of students served. So students of color, veterans, single moms, first generation college students, super important work, and being able and having the privilege to share their stories and amplify those voices and those experiences was really important to me. Obviously, I got to do some of that in a different sense at the University of Minnesota, but I definitely think about the communications specific experiences and proprietary higher ed, and I would say that's been pretty unique. Prior to my transition into higher ed, I was a journalist for 10 years. I moved all over the country working at different local TV affiliates. My last stop in TV was here, which is my hometown, KSTP TV. So, I thought for sure that I'd be one of those lifer journalists, and then you are in the business for a significant amount of time and you realize it's definitely hard it's a hard profession. There's just not a lot of personal life. I mean, it may have changed now, but back when I was in TV, it was definitely a 24-hour business. And so I think it was a really important step for me to explore outside of the industry. And so my advice would be easy on yourself. Like sometimes your plan isn't the plan that it manifests, right? I didn't think at, almost at 40 years old that I would be working on, as in more of the brand marketing space versus in journalism. So I think that, soaking up the experiences and being able to apply them in different ways is certainly part of what makes a professional communicator a strong professional. And I think just giving yourself the grace to know that you can change your mind.
Great, thank you so much. So our next question is, many people can get overwhelmed by all the different career options that fall under the communications industry. Are there strategies you would recommend for someone trying to find areas that may be a good fit for them? And Maggie, could you kick us off with this response?
Yeah, I'd be happy to. So I remember before I graduated, I didn't really know, like I knew that I wanted to go into broadcast journalism, but I also knew there was a lot like that still meant a lot of different things, right? And so I did not, I'm notoriously like, I just cannot commit to anything. So that's like I'm working on it. And so at one point before I graduated, I was interning I was like a communications intern for the city of Eden Prairie. I was writing for the Minnesota Daily, and I was on the editorial board. I was interning at a radio station, and then I was also working as a production assistant at the local Fox affiliate. And I did that. I was killing myself a little bit, but I did that because I really wanted to kind of see like just like a few different ways I can manifest, right? Like I can practice communications or journalism and see what could potentially work. And then eventually I landed in journalism. But I would say in that time of my life, it was, don't be picky, right? Like just try everything. It's gonna take a few months to like figure out like what's working, what you kind of like, what you don't like. But for those like commitment phones out there that might like, or indecisive people, just like that helped me a lot, because then I can now say for certain, I absolutely do not want to work for a radio station, right? Like I know that. And then this kind of the second phase of that answer. And if I hadn't gotten, so I transitioned from Fox 9 to Best Buy, but my plan, as I realized I wanted to go into PR, was to go, I really wanted a job at an agency. And in my mind, and even when I'm kind of like looking at people that I'm hiring for my team, and I'm sure, Vish, this makes you really happy, but I love bringing on people from agencies, because an agency is always going to give you so many different, like very quickly, it's going to immerse you in so many different kinds of communications practices. And I find that roles in agencies like kind of help about that. And so, you know, when what's nice about an agency is you get kind of like the variety and types of work in different sectors and industries, and it's difficult and it's fast paced, but you kind of like learn everything really fast and help hone those skills, and you kind of decide quickly. So I think that's like my biggest advice. Anyone who comes and asks me, like, I don't know, like, where should I work? What should I do? I want a job in communications. My advice is always agency. I kind of wish I would have done that too, just to, again, I'm a commitment phobe. So I like to like try everything, but that would be my biggest point of advice.
Great, thank you. Naomi, do you have anything you'd like to add?
No, I think, can you hear me? I got a weird alert here.
Yep, we can hear you.
Oh, okay, good. No, I think that's fantastic advice. I think Maggie's spot on. I think the more diverse experiences, the more you immerse yourself in being, you know, generalist, a strategist, a specialist, the more you hone your skills, you know, in writing, you know, making sure that you're, you know, thinking about the way the world is today, like the digital first approach to marketing communications, or frankly, it's important in any of the communication specialties today. I think the more you can, you know, ensure that your experiences are broad and you get, you know, deep, rich opportunities within those roles, I think the better, the easier it'll be for you to figure out where your lane is in the realm of comms.
Thank you both so much for those insights. We have one more question before we will start to take questions from participants. So if you have questions, you can start to put them in the chat or just hang on to it if you would rather raise your hand and ask the question after we wrap up this last one. So are there any specific professional development opportunities or other avenues for connecting with your peers that you would recommend to someone new to this industry? And Vish, would you take this question, please?
Yeah, happy to. So probably a little bit less relevant for this audience, but just when I started my career at Weber, it's because I participated in this mentorship network that was offered to students at the time. And Maggie, I think you're on the panel. So if you have anything else to add, please do. But I'm kind of trying to go back to the roots of those and participating actually at Boston Scientific in a mentorship program again. I'm a new people manager. So trying to like get those skills and connecting with people who can help me navigate that is new. So number one is just like back to the basics. I have participated in PRSA events, which are awesome to meet your peers in the industry, especially when I was at the agency. I think we were members of PRSA, so we got passes to go attend all the networking events, which was really fun. And admittedly, I haven't gone to as many of these lately since I'm now in like a more channel specific role. So for social media, there's can't remember the formal title, but social media breakfast. I think that used to happen every quarter where you got to learn best practices. There are a lot of events like the Minnesota Digital Summit is coming up in August. So I try to go to some of these conferences that are most relevant for my social media industry, or if it's healthcare communications, just because those are great to meet people who are probably in the same boat as you are, looking for educational opportunities or just networking opportunities. Especially like I'm guilty of this myself, but as you get like comfortable in your career, we kind of forget to be a little bit proactive when it comes to networking and meeting the right people. One thing I'm trying to get better at is just truly just LinkedIn. So connecting people with LinkedIn. And if there is someone I'm interested in learning about their career, asking them out for coffee or a Zoom call. I've never had anyone turn me down for it. So 100% success rate. So none of this is like super new, but I think just going back to the basics. For me personally, continuing education is a big part of it. So I'm pursuing my MBA, but I've also considered like a Google Analytics certification, because I think that will not only help my skill set, but then I get to meet people who are in the digital analytics realm, and maybe there's something I can learn from there, and just generally like have a new skill set. Finding opportunities. And I've been in this place where a lot of my career development has been because I had the right relationships in place and the right mentors and people to guide. So again, like, don't worry, like reach out. I just feel like being proactive is such an important thing. And as you get comfortable in your career, you kind of forget, but like, not gonna lie, will I reach out to all the other panelists and ask them if they want to meet for coffee? Probably, because it's good for my career. I mean, we're all in such different spaces. So it's an important reminder for all of us, regardless of where you are in your career journey.
Love that. It's such a great reminder of the importance of making those connections and utilizing the opportunities, like meeting some new folks today and taking advantage of that opportunity to build those relationships. Let's see, Jenny, would you like to add to this question?
Yeah, I'm not sure that I can add more. I think Vish has said a lot of, stated a lot of PRSA, depending on the demographic of those that are participating. So PRSA is really, a great resource and is for strictly PR, communications, journalism. But for those who are interested in, say, mission-driven or nonprofit organizations, I would direct people to the Young Nonprofit Professional Network at YNPN. They have a Twin Cities chapter that is very engaged, and they host a lot of different events. I'm guessing probably a lot virtually now. And they partner also with, for those who are interested in philanthropy, there's an Emerging Professionals in Philanthropy, EPIP, Twin Cities chapter. That's an option. I would say that with respect to any field, there's really a lot to offer in terms of, and for those who are consider themselves maybe introverts, or, you know, find that even in a Zoom setting, it might be overwhelming to try and connect with people. I have been trying to utilize LinkedIn much more assertively, I would say. You know, I again echo what Vish has said, is that when people reach out with a specific, you know, request, I never, you know, because I know that I've been in that position. So yeah, reach out to me, reach out to you know, the other panelists, and I love to make connections. It sort of makes me, you know, delighted when I can find the right fit, you know, for someone, or at least point them in the right direction. It makes me feel like, okay, things are working out in the universe. So that's how I feel, and I'm happy to, you know, talk specifics with people. So.
Thanks, Jenny. And Maggie, I believe, also had a few things she wanted to
Yeah,
add.
I did. And Jenny, I have to say, I'm with you. I love making the right connections, and it's something so gratifying about that. This is to add on to what Vish was saying as far as, you know, building your network. I would also say one thing that's helped me a lot is, well, it's a really small community. Like Naomi and our paths had crossed, but there were always like one person separated, guaranteed, that we all know each other. So yeah, building your network, but also kind of maintaining the relationships that you've had in previous roles as well. So one thing that's helped me quite a bit is I have really strong relationships with everyone. I've kind of, not everyone, right? Like, but with a lot of the people that I've worked with in previous roles, especially with leaders. I'm always like thinking about how I can be a better leader, but even in my role now, I reached out to my old chief communications officer at Best Buy, just asking, like, am I thinking about this work in the right way? Here's kind of my strategy. What other thoughts you might have? Because it helps you, like, just kind of continues to push you, especially as you continue growing in your career. So that's, I mean, yes, build those new relationships, but make sure that you're also fostering the ones that you've had and those great relationships that you've made along the way, and you're not letting some of that go.
Fantastic advice from everybody. Thank you so much. We do have a couple questions in the chat already, so we'll jump into that. But participants, please do continue to put your questions in the chat, or you can raise your hand if you prefer to ask your question verbally. So the first question we have is, how did you decide that you did or didn't need an additional degree to work in the positions you were interested in? And for those that did, how did you choose which degree would best fit your objectives? So anybody can answer this question. You can just unmute yourself if you have a response.
I can take that
this one.
Oh, go ahead, Naomi.
You spoke
Yeah.
at the same time.
I'll be quick so you can add on. You know, I think for me, because I'd spent so much time in the private sector, right, and as a journalist, when I transitioned into higher education and more on the proprietary side, when I got to the university, it became really clear that I needed to brush up and expand my my knowledge base in the public sector. So in addressing communications issues, public affairs issues from the public perspective. So so that was what really drove me, and not wanting to, not to say that there wasn't anything I could learn. So you know, from doing you know, a strategic communications master degree, but I felt that I would be stretched a bit more and diversify some of my, or enhance some of my experiences by going into public affairs, or by getting a degree, I should say, in public affairs, versus just sort of building upon skills I already had.
Yeah, I think similarly, I looked at, yeah, advancing in strategic comms. They have a good program at St. Thomas where it's, I think, a master's of business communications, for example. I also looked at law school because I thought, okay, well, I'm looking at policy. But really you have to think about what it is you want for your next, I would say 1 to 3 roles, even after, this educational experience. And I really felt that I wanted to pivot in a different direction, either within communications or marketing, or in public policy, public affairs. I wanted to give myself that flexibility. So similarly, I already had skills and expertise in certain areas within marketing communications, but I felt I lacked kind of the, like actual subject matter knowledge around public policy and what it means to make policy, or be on the side of advocating for certain public policies. So that's the decision making process I went through. I would also, for those who are sort of thinking about pursuing, an advanced degree, think about trying to do it while you're employed somewhere that will reimburse you. That's an important factor. I did this all out of pocket, which is fine, but it really is nice when you don't have to foot the bill totally. So that's an important consideration.
Excellent. And I know Vish put great advice as well in the chat. Anything either Vish or Maggie you want to, no pressure, but if you have anything else you want to add, let me know. Okay. Yeah, I appreciate, I kind of heard a theme in terms of thinking about where do you already have some expertise and skill set, and what is maybe the content area that you're not yet familiar with. So I really appreciate that personally, kind of thinking about it in that way, and hopefully that's a helpful framework for others who are listening. So thank you so much. We do have another question here. Let me just scroll up so I can find it. Okay, so this person asked, I'm graduating with a Master of Public Health, and I'm applying for communications roles. Could you share some advice about the interview process? Who would like to take that one? Jenny looks like she's ready.
I can try to answer that. I don't have an MPH, but I work with a lot of MPH graduates. It's part of what our work is. Well, I guess I would want to know a little bit more about your background, and whether or not you had previous communications experience. I'm guessing maybe not. But I think what generally people are looking for for communications roles are an understanding of communication strategy and executing on tactics, and sort of key principles around that are, the idea around target audiences. What are you trying, what kind of message, what kind of, the key questions. What do you want them to feel? What do you want them to do? What do you, want them to think? And if you can look, a quick Google search around strategic communications will get you, a lot of information around what communications professionals do. And in the context of public health, you're often talking about public health behavior, individual, behavioral change. So these kinds of messages around, active living or things like that, or things like that. Yeah. So I'm not sure if that helps, but those are, I would recommend looking at some strategic communications websites.
And the only thing I'd add is just restating my previous point, because you're in a healthcare field, look at things that you wouldn't normally consider communications. So it's not just, external comms and internal comms. Like, you could do grant writing, you could do like direct to patient marketing, you can do like R&D components. So there's a lot more that goes in like healthcare comms that, again, normally you would, I'm not R&D minded by any means, but we have a communications person who does that. So just look beyond just internal and external comms.
Yeah, totally agree.
Yeah, and what I would add is, just making sure that going into the roles that you're interviewing for, really understanding the audience and the segments that you're going to be messaging to. Excuse me. I think that's really important, especially when you think about public health and all of the issues within healthcare and the audiences that you're like the diverse audiences you're going to serve, different types of communities. So it could be, communicating to rural audiences. It could be addressing or developing communication strategies to address social determinants of health. There's so many macro factors and truly understanding the market. I think understanding the audience and being able to speak to it in some of the creative ways that you would approach your work in messaging or communicating to those audiences, and then also understanding what's happening in the marketplace broadly, the healthcare sector broadly, will be really important.
Thank you all so much. So we're going to transition into the next part of our session, which is breakout rooms. So this will give participants the opportunity to connect with us with a smaller group and with one of our panelists today. So we will be in these groups for about 20 minutes, and Rebecca will welcome back. I think most people are back in our large room. Hope you had great conversations in your small groups. We are going to wrap up with just one last question, which is any last words of advice regarding strategies for navigating career advancement, or best advice that you want to leave our participants with today. So Vish, do you want to kick us off, and then you can maybe ask the next panelist to go?
Sure, happy to. We were just talking about this in my breakout room, but the idea of like, where do you see yourself in 5 years? I hate that question when it comes up in interviews, but I think especially with COVID, we kind of saw like just our jobs in communications are going to change very drastically with like new technologies that come through and whatever else happens globally. I know at Boston, like Salesforce and stuff like that is going to be like integrated. So like the same advice I've given like throughout, like you don't know, like communications as a field is probably growing and being integrated in so many components of like businesses. So keep your eyes open, keep your ears open. Like you never know where those like comms opportunities are gonna come through, and just be on the lookout. And I will popcorn over to Naomi.
Thanks. Yeah, we had a good conversation about this in our breakout session. I would just say be open-minded. I think that there are a lot of positions that you look at in the job description, you're kind of like, okay, this is 4 sentences long. This doesn't really, it's so ambiguous. I'm not really sure this is something for me. It may not be like the dream job right away. But those types of, but just apply, just take the risk, just put yourself out there. You never know who you're going to meet in an interview. You never know who you're going to connect with. You never know who knows someone else. I think that's really important. And I think one of my colleagues, panelists said this early on, but take advantage of opportunities like this where you have a small group and you're able to connect, one-on-one or 2-on-1 with someone and follow up with them and leverage their relationships. You never know when they're going to be hiring, right? That's some of the advice that I was giving to my breakout group, is that you never know who knows someone. And I figure, like with me in my career, I didn't get where I was without having someone else helping me along the way. So I'm certainly one to want to pay it forward. So don't hesitate, any of you, even if you weren't in my breakout group, reaching out to me if there's something that I can help you with along your career journey. Maggie.
All right. Awesome advice. I +1 on all of that. But mine would definitely be like, take that risk. And don't just go with what you think might be comfortable. So when I took the Final Four job, it was a really tough, I had a 2-month-old baby, and I knew that it was going to be a temporary job, and I was really comfortable at Sleep Number, but the opportunity was probably the best. It was the best part of my entire career, and I learned a ton, and I was exhausted, and it kind of changed the course of my career too. So and it opened a lot of doors. So, I just take don't be, there's always going to be another job. So just do it, I would say. And Jenny.
Yeah, I would also echo that. I mean, I think sometimes, you aren't sure of actually what you're capable of, honestly. What I would say is really make sure to take advantage of, again, like spaces like this, but however intimate you think, either a team or a working experience, or even volunteering, there may be opportunities to meet people that are in the communications field. Again, I think other people have said this is a small metro area. You're bound to meet people that are connected either a degree or two, and make sure you try to remember that, and remind them of the connection that they had with you. And people are very willing to help. I so far have not, I've always advanced through connections. That's what I'll say, is that they've really aided. I can say, oh, this is how I know this person, or they've thought of me and encouraged me to apply. I'm not going to say that nepotism played a role, but I think that being connected makes a huge difference in this work. And I think I would say most careers.
Fantastic. Thank you all so much. Thank you, panelists, each of you, for taking time to share your wisdom and your experience and advice with all of us today. We really appreciate it. And thank you for all the participants for joining us today. I'm going to turn it over to our host, Rebecca, who will wrap us up.
Hello, everyone. Thank you again to Katie, Naomi, Maggie, Jenny, Vishaka, and Maggie. Thank you so much for being here today, everyone, joining us early on this Tuesday morning. I will be sharing out the recording of today's presentation, or conversation rather. Again, that recording is from the beginning through our end of our panel. And we have not recorded our breakout sessions. And I'll also be sharing a survey for your feedback. We always like to gather feedback on each of our webinars to gather information on your experience, and also for you to provide feedback on future topics that you'd like for us to host as an alumni association. When you filled out the registration form, you may have filled out a box that asks for your LinkedIn URL, and that will be shared with all of the registered participants today. So you'll look out for that email in about 1 to 2 business days. And thank you, and have a great day. Bye, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.